Who will be tonight's early round shocker? Where will these 12 drafters select Saquon Barkley? And can the Joes keep the title on their side for the sixth straight year? Follow along with the live draft board tonight and watch our pick-by-pick analysis as we call the action from the 2023 FFPC Pros versus Joes, the red right hand #1 league, to see who's going to win a 2024 FFPC Main Event squad. We've got a great show for you. I'm Eric Balkman. I'm here. Ferrell Elliott is here as well. Stick around. Your special edition of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour starts now.
The pressure, I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture, are we not all our father's sons? I became a man, nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all the Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs out there. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ferrell Elliott. Tonight, we have the first of 6 special episodes for you. It's the 2023 FFPC Pros versus Joes, the red right hand #1 draft tonight. We'll be covering it for its entire duration. Shout out to the chat room, both on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter right now. Post your questions you might have in there. You can connect with the show on Twitter at HSFF Hour. I'm at Eric Balkman, and Ferrell is at J. Ferrell Elliott. You can post on our Facebook page, facebook.com/HSFF Hour. Email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. Shout out to the hard work of our producer and mutual friend Rob, and of course our audio engineer and my best friend Bryce. Before we get started, as a reminder for all you FFPC people watching, tomorrow is indeed deadline day for the 2023 FFPC Main Event early draft slot announcement. That means if you are paid in full by midnight Pacific time tomorrow night, you're going to get your draft slot for the FFPC Main Event by July 31st, and you'll have a month plus to plot your way as far as what draft slot you're going to have to figure out how you're going to cash that $1 million grand prize. Remember, if you already have a team, you're going to get $400 off each additional team you add on. Square those balances away at myffpc.com. And don't forget tonight, ladies and gentlemen, you're also going to be able to, throughout the duration of draft season, go for a second $1 million grand prize with the Fantasy Pros Championship at myffpc.com. Just $350 to get in. You get a 3-pack. You get a $50 discount off that. So take your swings now to win $1 million for just a $350 entry fee over at myffpc.com. Shout out to tonight's drafters, ladies and gentlemen. I'll get into it right now, drafting from the 1 spot. And I should, for those of you watching who aren't familiar with this, this is something that we do every year. It's going to be 6 FFPC high stakes Joes versus 6 industry pros. Now, the winner of this league will get a free 2024 FFPC Main Event where they can gun for $1 million grand prize next year. There can only be one winner, and it's going to be one of these 6 Joes or one of these 6 industry pros. Drafting from the 1 spot tonight, FFPC Joe Jahoon Kim. We're going to hear from Todd Burros from Sharp Football Analysis. He's drafting in the 2nd spot tonight. He's going to pop on here in a little while. Jeff Tirabassi, a longtime FFPC player, drafting from the 3-hole. Hitting cleanup tonight is Footballguys' own Sigmund Bloom, followed by him, John Terry, a guy who's won I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars in the FFPC high-stakes space. He is drafting 5th tonight, followed by former guest of the show, Billy Musio from Player Profiler. Justin Bacon, an FFPC Joe, drafting after him in the 7th spot. 8th tonight is Bob Lung from BigGuyFantasySports.com, followed by Troy Wells, an FFPC Joe. Evan Silva, EstablishTheRun.com is where he's at. He's also in the 10th spot tonight. That's also where he's at. On Friday night, if you caught the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, you caught an interview with the guy who is drafting 11th tonight. That's Josh Latz, an FFPC Joe. And then Alex Dunlap from RosterWatch.com is picking 12th. Without further ado, I'll go to the board right here and show you what we have up right now. The first round is complete. I will just go through it here. Jahoon Kim takes Justin Jefferson at the 1 spot. Then you're looking at Jamar Chase at the 102. Nothing out of the ordinary there. Christian McCaffrey goes to Jeff Tirabassi at 3. Now, this is interesting because he's an FFPC Joe. He knows how important tight ends are in the format. He decides to go against Kelsey and go with Christian McCaffrey at the 103. Sigmund Bloom says, thank you very much. I'll take Travis Kelsey at the 104. Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill off the board after that. Cooper Kupp to John Terry, guy who was being drafted, right around that one spot last year. And then Tyreek Hill to Billy Musio at the 106. Austin Eckler, fresh off his Zoom call on Saturday with his fellow NFL running backs, goes 7th tonight to Justin Bacon. A.J. Brown to Bob Lung from Big Guy Fantasy Sports. He takes A.J. Brown at the 108 tonight, and that is the 4th wide receiver off the board. Bijan Robinson at the 109 to Troy Wells, and then you're looking at Stephon Diggs to Evan Silva here at the 110. Jonathan Taylor is going to Josh Latz. We heard him on the show. He said that he wanted to get a Jonathan Taylor, Garrett Wilson start, and that's exactly what he did tonight from the 11 spot. So he gets Jonathan Taylor at the 111, and then Alex Dunlap from Roster Watch ends up taking CD Lamb at the 112, and that is your first round. The first round of the first Pros versus Joe's draft in the books tonight here. And I got to tell you, it played off pretty much like how we kind of thought. I'm going to compare it to the FFPC Best Ball Tourney, another tournament that mirrors this. Again, this is a 20-round FFPC Best Ball Slim Draft. So there's no lineup management. There's no roster management. It is set it and forget it. And you look at how the ADP has been going over the last few days in the contest for the FFPC for the $200,000 grand prize at myffpc.com, where you can sign up for just $125 entry fee. There's not a whole lot of differences on here as far as the ADP goes. Shout out to Darren Armani from Fantasy Mojo, at Fantasy Mojo on Twitter, fantasymojo.com. If you are playing in the FFPC, I highly recommend that you get a subscription to fantasymojo.com so you can take a look at not only the ADP, but the stack finder and all the tools he has on there. It certainly makes playing FFPC fantasy football a lot more fun. The one thing I guess that does stand out to me, guys, in the first round, A.J. Brown has an ADP of 112 as the 8th receiver off the board in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament. Tonight, he ended up going a little bit higher than that. He goes tonight at the 108 as the 5th wide receiver off the board behind Jefferson, Chase, Kupp, and Hill. Now, Bob Lung from Big Guy Fantasy Sports will tell you how important consistency is to him when he is drafting these high-stakes fantasy football teams, including the Pros versus Joes. And I'm sure he's going to tell you that, look, you look at what A.J. Brown's been able to accomplish over the course of the last several seasons, it's very important to get a guy like him there. Now, he could have gone with Diggs, he could have gone with Lamb, he could have gone with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and perhaps you could also make the case that all three of those players are just as consistent as A.J. Brown. I don't necessarily know, maybe outside of Diggs, if they have the track record or as big of a track record as A.J. Brown has, and maybe that's why Bob Lung went with him there. Bob, feel free to drop in on the broadcast tonight and explain that pick. We would love to hear from you. The second round is about to be in the books. Right now, Alex Dunlap from Roster Watch is one of one of 3 teams so far with a wide receiver start in this best ball format. Amon-Ra St. Brown at the 201 to go with his CD Lamb. We already told you that Josh Latz took Garrett Wilson at the 201. First quarterback off the board tonight is Josh Allen, and he goes to Evan Silva. He gets the big Buffalo stack right away. Diggs and Josh Allen. Rounds 1 and rounds 2. He's not messing around, trying to go for maybe the overall title in the Pros versus Joes tournament, which doesn't really get you anything more than the free FFPC main event that you get for winning the league. But certainly, I know that Evan Silva, a longtime FFPC player, would love to take away the PVJ crown away from the Joes, who have won it now for the last 5 years. Nick Chubb off the board to Troy Wells, as he is the only team to start running back tonight. Nick Chubb off the board at the 204. Patrick Mahomes not that much farther behind Josh Allen. He's the 205 tonight to Bob Lung to go with A.J. Brown. It's interesting that Bob also had the opportunity there. If he wanted to go with the early stack, he could have taken Jalen Hurts there and gotten the Brown-Hurts stack. But it was more important to him to get Mahomes there as well. So an interesting draft unfolding for Bob Lung from Big Guy Fantasy Sports. Devontae Adams joins Justin Bacon's team with Austin Eckler there, at the 206. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, a pair of Dolphins receivers to Billy Musio from Player Profiler. He goes with Hill in the first, Waddle in the second. I have a feeling who he is targeting as his starting quarterback in this format. More on that later, I'm sure. Saquon Barkley falls to John Terry tonight at the 208, followed by Tony Pollard off the board right after Barkley at the 209 to Sigmund Bloom, who gets Kelsey in the first round, Pollard in the second. The second tight end tonight does not go until the 210. That's Mark Andrews on Jeff Tirabassi squad, so he starts off with a pretty strong start. a guy who could be the number 1 overall running back, and a guy who technically could be the number 1 overall tight end this year too, and Mark Andrews. One of those is more likely to happen than the other, but it still remains to be seen, or it still remains to be said that he got elite at both those positions there. And then we find that the number 1 and number 2 spots tonight, Jahoon Kim in the 1, Todd Burros in the 2, both start off wide receiver, one of 4 teams in this league to start off with receiver here. Devontae Smith joins Jamar Chase on Todd Burrows' squad, and then T. Higgins joining Justin Jefferson on the Lucky Show. That is Jahoon Kim's squad from the 1 spot tonight, Jefferson and Higgins. I want to look at the Devontae Smith ADP here. Devontae Smith normally goes at the 212 at wide receiver 13, so it wasn't necessarily a reach right there for Todd Burrows. But, what we did see here, and Todd, I know, saw this as well. You look at Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs going to Evan Silva's squad and from the 10 spot. Then you look at Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, the 1 and 2 picks, to Billy Musio from the 6 spot tonight, a pair of Dolphins. You could have had Todd going with T. Higgins there and then getting a certain Cincinnati quarterback later to get the mega stack there going. He chose to go Devontae Smith instead. And, while it's worth noting that you'd want to be the overall champion of this, where you have to beat out 83 other teams essentially, but the money really is winning your league. Like, there is nothing else beside that. You don't get anything for second. You don't get anything for the overall championship. Just beating the other 11 teams. So it's interesting to go with, like, where he could have gone with a Chase, Higgins, and perhaps Burrow start later. He chose to go with Devontae Smith instead. That is what we're looking at here through the first 2 rounds. Now, Dave Nowitzki is in the YouTube chat right now. He says Team 9 is winning. Team 9 is Troy Wells, the FFPC Joe, getting Bijan Robinson and Nick Chubb, 2 of the highest, what we think are going to be 2 of the highest volume running backs in the NFL this year. The only team to start off running back, and and he's on the clock right now. We'll see what Troy does here. Obviously, there's 3 tight ends off the board. He could get the number 4 quarterback off the board. He ends up getting the number 4 tight end, and that's George Kittle. So he starts off with Robinson, Chubb, and Kittle from the 9 right now. So that's what you're looking at. Todd Burrows chiming in too, that the 3 guys he wanted at the 211 tonight all went right before him. That was Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, and Mark Andrews. And then he also said that stacks in a confined league are much less important. He passed on Hurts, which is what Bob Lung did in the 2nd round, and then Todd passed on Jalen Hurts in the 3rd as well, because he could have gotten Hurts there at the 302. He chose not to. So that's what we're looking at here in the first round tonight, in the first 2 rounds tonight of the FFPC Pros versus Joes, league number 1, the red right hand. Let's get through the 3rd round here. Some interesting picks in this round. TJ Hawkinson is the 3rd tight end drafted. He goes at the 301 tonight to Jahoon Kim. So he's got a lot of targets, a lot of pass catchers on his roster already through 3 rounds. Ramondre Stevenson is the first running back chosen by Todd Burrows. He gets Stevenson to go Chase and Smith there. Stevenson, the 8th running back off the board. Jahmyr Gibbs, the rookie from Detroit, is the 3rd selection of the 3rd round to Jeff Tirabassi, joining Christian McCaffrey in that backfield. Boy, there's a lot of targets there, and he still does not have a receiver on his team. So he's got a lot of targets already, a lot of catches already on that squad. Derrick Henry joining Tony Pollard on Sigmund Bloom's squad. Derrick Henry going to the 304 pick tonight. Jalen Hurts off the board to John Terry to go with Cooper Kupp and Saquon Barkley. Chris Olave, the only team to start receiver, is Billy Musio tonight, and he gets Chris Olave at the 306 to go with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Then you're looking at Josh Jacobs to Justin Bacon at the 307, Najee Harris to Bob Lung at the 308. We already told you that Troy Wells got George Kittle at the 309, DK Metcalf off the board at the 310 tonight to Evan Silva. So he is joining Diggs and Allen. Now he gets Metcalf on that squad as well. Breece Hall goes at the 311 tonight. So a pair of Jets to Josh Latz here. And I believe we went through what we said could be his first 4 picks tonight. And I think Kittle would have been, he wanted Kittle there. I could be wrong on that, but Josh will be joining the broadcast in the 2nd hour. He can tell us all about it. But he gets Breece Hall there, another Jet to go with Garrett Wilson and Jonathan Taylor at the 311, and then Lamar Jackson off the board at the 312 tonight. Lamar Jackson, the 4th quarterback chosen. So this is what we're looking at right now through 3 rounds of the FFPC Pros versus Joes. Heading out to the YouTube chat right now. Fufflemaster says that Team 6 is looking good. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave. I think I don't want to call it the lazy analysis here, but the belief has always been in best ball, ever since best ball started, however many years ago it was, a lot of people said load up on those running backs early. Worry about the receivers later because you can get these spike week type receivers. And in the FFPC format, you only have to start 2 receivers every single week. So that the approach for a lot of people has been to load up on the high volume running backs early. Billy Musio, who is as accomplished as a high stakes player as there is out there, obviously you can check out his stuff at Player Profiler as well. You are looking at, excuse me, a start of receiver with Hill, Waddle, and Olave. So when everybody else is zigging, he is zagging here. And you can't really trash the strategy knowing how much money he's won in the FFPC over the years. But this is a very interesting start that we are looking at here, and he's doubling down on it, or in this case quadrupling down on it, as he goes with another receiver here in the 4th round as well. This is a very fascinating start for Billy Musio from the 6th spot here. We are about 3.5 rounds through tonight. As a reminder, if this is the first time you are watching the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, we air weekly on Friday nights at 10/9 Central on all the FFPC social channels, including YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. You can also access full on-demand streaming basically anywhere you get podcasts as well for the audio version later. And we certainly hope that you would join us for year-round analysis here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Plenty of dynasty conversation, best ball conversation, and really the home of High Stakes Fantasy Football. This is where you come, and we bring on a new guest every week, an accomplished high stakes player, sometimes a non-accomplished high stakes player, a person who's just joining the FFPC. That's what we have for you every week on the show. We hang out for an hour, and it's a blast. So check us out Friday nights live at 10/9 Central year-round. We are almost through the 4th round here. I'll take you through it. Joe Mixon is the first running back off the board here to Alex Dunlap. Joe Mixon joining CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Lamar Jackson on that squad. Joe Burrow to Josh Latz here at the 402, followed by Kyle Pitts at the 403. Deebo Samuel off the board as the first receiver selected by Troy Wells. Calvin Ridley to Bob Lung, joining A.J. Brown as his 2 receivers on his squad tonight. The only team with 3 running backs through 4 rounds is indeed Justin Bacon's squad from the 7 hole. Austin Eckler, Josh Jacobs, and now Aaron Jones at the 406. Billy Musio keeping that wide receiver, the peeing yellow, as the kids say, peeing yellow. Keenan Allen, 407 tonight for him. Amari Cooper is joining Cooper Kupp, Saquon Barkley, and Jalen Hurts on John Terry's squad. Justin Fields, the 6th quarterback chosen. He goes at the 409 tonight to Sigmund Bloom, who has a pair of running backs, an elite tight end, and now an elite quarterback on his roster. Christian Watson, the first receiver drafted by Jeff Tirabassi, to wrap up the 2nd round. The last 2 picks of the 4th round. Travis Etienne to Todd Burros and Kenneth Walker. Running back 17 tonight at the 412 to Jahoon Kim. Let's get into our first guest tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It is Josh Latz, our guest from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour on Friday night. He joins us tonight. Josh, you are 4 rounds in, and I got to tell you, the first couple picks went your way. How are you liking your team through your first 4 rounds?
Pretty good, actually. I actually was pretty surprised to see Breece Hall when he came around. I totally get the injury concerns, but to get him that late in the 3rd felt pretty good. I had some hopes that one of the Tyreek Hills types would have slid to me in the 1st. I was hoping to get that blue chip wide receiver, but getting Garrett Wilson, I feel pretty comfortable with that right now. And like I said, I think Joe Burrow finishes as QB1, QB2 this year. I think it's going to be just a blow-up season for him. So pretty excited about my first 4 rounds.
Anything that's standing out to you so far tonight as maybe something that was a surprise in the draft that you didn't see coming?
I can't remember which team it is, but I saw somebody went wide receiver, I think their first 3 picks. Mm-hmm. That was a little surprising, although if you're going to go 0 RB, this draft has some pretty rich options in the probably around 6 to 9 area. So I have a feeling I know what the draft board is going to look like for that individual. But yeah, it's about what I expected. I was a little upset that TJ Hawkinson went where he did because I think that's baby Kelsey this year. Mm-hmm. And so I was hoping that he might fall a little bit further, but such is life.
Such is life indeed. Now, refresh my memory. What were the first 4 picks that you wanted to start your draft with from Friday night?
Yeah, I was thinking of going Taylor, Wilson, Burrow, Watson, and since Brees Hall was there where he was at the back end of the third, I figured I'd grab him. I felt like that was giving me at least a half round of value.
So you have so the Hall thing you didn't see coming. That's why you ended up taking him. Were we talking about a potential tight end for you from the 11 spot in the first 4 or 5 rounds?
There was that. There he went. That was
yeah, that was right.
So yeah, such is life, right?
Right.
But yeah, so that was the one that I was like, I was kind of curious how the whole thing would go on the tight end side because the drop off after Waller is pretty Waller and Goddard is pretty significant. So yeah, that was the one that I was hoping for. Convenient timing.
This is great too, because for everybody who's watching, this is Josh's literally first ever FFPC draft, a guy who has been grinding and utilizing his prizes in his other leagues over the years to save up to not only play in the FFPC main event, but he's flying out to Planet Hollywood to draft his teams live with the FFPC coming up in September. So that's going to be very cool for you. What also is cool for us is you are on the clock right now here at the 5:11. You have Taylor and Hall on your team, Garrett Wilson at receiver, Burros your quarterback. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, this is a place where just based on where the board's falling right now, I think that probably the value of wide receiver is going to probably be about the best option I have. I had a pretty good expectation that I'd be looking at something similar to this. It's just really hoping for a tight end to be there.
Right, yeah.
But that's okay. I think that we're going to go this route because I think this is a return season for him.
So you get DJ Moore here, wide receiver 25. I don't know if Sigmund Bloom was hoping to get him to pair with his Justin Fields in the 4th round. But so this is interesting now because you have basically your top 2 running backs. You have your top 2 receivers. In the FFPC, you only have to start 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers. So technically, those starting positions are soaked up. Now, there are 2 flexes that you can deal with. You have your starting quarterback here. We talked about on Friday night how you were looking at trying to get one of the top 7 tight ends and hoping that Dallas Goedert would fall to you, obviously, as the 7th tight end off the board. Now, that didn't happen tonight. So now I don't want to necessarily call this a pivot for you here, but are you pivoting? And I don't want to refer to it as a panic pick here, but is there a pivot for you to maybe, okay, I can't get one of the top 7 tight ends now that I've seen 7 tight ends off the board through 5.5 rounds? I don't want to be the guy drafting the 12th, 13th tight end off the board. Are you going to look at a tight end position right here?
Yeah. I think that I might have to do a little bit of reaching here, unfortunately. But I feel better about this than terrible. I'll say. So we're going to go that route right there.
So David Njoku is the pick. Talk a little bit about why you ended up going with Njoku there. And by the way, and I'll tell you this right now, according to Fantasy Mojo's FFPC Best Ball Tournament data, David Njoku normally comes off the board at the 8:01. Now you take him tonight at the 6:02. There is a real possibility that he wouldn't make it back to you. Tell us what you like about Njoku this year.
Well, one, I think that, you've got a Deshaun Watson that's not dealing with all the, kind of chaos that was going around there. I do like some of the moves that they've made, overall at the skill positions. And so this might be the first time we really get to see the sort of full-powered Cleveland offense. If you recall last year, Njoku was all the rage. It didn't really pan out in the beginning. There were some bright spots mid to late season. But this year, I think that, although I don't put him in the same tier as a Goddard Waller, I would actually say that Waller probably has a lower floor than where I think Njoku will, but probably a higher ceiling. But Njoku, I think, has a pretty decent ceiling as well. I think that there's a pretty good opportunity for him there. And if the Cleveland offense starts clicking like we think they might, I think Njoku will get a good piece of that, and red zone targets especially.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we're looking at right now with Cleveland, what's fresh in our mind, it's Deshaun Watson missing all that time, coming back and kind of stinking up the joint last year, but that was kind of to be expected as far as the rust goes. So now he comes in, or now you can draft these Browns players at kind of a discount right now. And we might look back on this Njoku pick in the 6th round for you here as the pick that really solidified this team if he does have that baller year and if he does catch a lot of touchdowns, which you alluded to as well. Josh, thank you so much for hopping aboard not only Friday but tonight as well and taking us through a couple of your picks. Good luck the rest of the way, and we will see you at Planet Hollywood in about a month and a half or so, maybe a little bit less.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Hey, have a great night. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Josh Latz, ladies and gentlemen. Again, a first-time FFPC player doing his first FFPC draft ever. He's going to be playing in the FFPC main event, hunting down that $1 million grand prize when we are drafting live in Las Vegas. And you can there's still obviously time to book your flights out there. Remember, main event, early draft slot deadline, midnight Pacific time tomorrow. So make sure that you are cashing in, registering for your drafts there, and getting those teams paid in full so you will know where you are drafting by July 31st. Let's get into the 5th round, I think is where we left off here. Yeah, 5th round, 501, Miles Sanders off the board to Jahoon Kim. That's his second running back. Darren Waller, the first tight end drafted by Todd Burros, followed by a receiver run here. DeAndre Hopkins, Drake London, and Jerry Jeudy to Tirabassi, Bloom, and Terry, respectively. Only quarterbacks going off the board tonight in the 5th round are Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence. Then you're looking at Dallas Goedert as the 7th tight end drafted at the 508 to Bob Lung, joining A.J. Brown on that squad as well, as far as the Eagles go. Terry McLaurin going to the Troy Wells FFPC Joe franchise at the 509. Alexander Madison, DJ Moore, and Christian Kirk. And the 5th round here, Madison to Silva, Moore to Justin Latz, and then Christian Kirk to Alex Dunlap. Let's just go through the 6th round. Chris Godwin off the board, 601 to Alex Dunlap as his 4th receiver. So now we're looking at 2 teams with 4 receivers through 6 rounds here. Joining Billy Muzio is Alex Dunlap with Lamb, St. Brown, Kirk, and Godwin to go with Lamar Jackson and Joe Mixon. And Njoku was the pick we saw from Josh Latz on air. Mike Williams joining Diggs and Metcalf on Evan Silva's squad. Deshaun Watson is the quarterback to Troy Wells here, his starting quarterback this year, followed by Rashad White to Bob Lung, joining Najee Harris in his backfield. Tyler Lockett, the 2nd receiver drafted by Justin Bacon. And then you're looking at J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, and David Montgomery. Dobbins to Billy Muzio, Cam Akers to John Terry, David Montgomery to Sigmund Bloom. Brandon Ayuk off the board as the 3rd receiver drafted by Jeff Tirabassi. Michael Pittman to Todd Burrows, and Isaiah Pacheco off the board at 612. You know, it's interesting as we just talk about Pacheco here for a second. We talked, I believe it was with Josh on Friday, we talked a lot about Pacheco. And this is a guy that, you know, FFPC players are always looking for that Kansas City wide receiver, that Kansas City running back that can kill it. And Pacheco is a guy that not a lot of people thought that he was going to be ready as soon as he is, including the Kansas City beat writers. And he's out there practicing already. So to get Pacheco at the 612, a guy that said he's working on his pass receptions or his pass catching abilities. And if the receptions go up this year, he's looking like a really good pick in the 6th round here tonight. Let's go through another polarized. This is like the polarizing running back round. I don't want to necessarily call it the dead zone because I know a lot of people think that there's a lot of value. You have a lot of really talented players here. You're looking at Rashad White, who I still regret trading in a dynasty league to the Dizzle a month or so ago for Nick Chubb. It still could work out for me this year. But Rashad White is going to be the running back this year for Tampa that could end up being a bell cow type guy there. J.K. Dobbins off the board to Billy Muzio. And when you start off a draft with 4 straight receivers, to get Dobbins as your number 1 running back, I think you could do a lot worse. We have Rich Bilyeu, another former guest in the show right now, talking about how Billy Muzio is killing it. He loves the start there with the 4 receivers, the stacking of Allen and Justin Herbert, and then obviously Dobbins and Damian Prince, who he just took in the 7th round. Cam Akers, I know people are excited about this year because of the ADP value. I don't necessarily think that they think Akers is going to be blowing up on an offense like Los Angeles's, but but where he is going, the 608, with not a lot of competition in that backfield, Akers could end up having a big impact for people who are drafting him in the mid rounds, at least the high stakes players. And then you're looking at David Montgomery here. I know he's lost a little bit of his shine because Jahmyr Gibbs keeps on climbing up draft boards. And then you're looking at we already talked about Pacheco here in the 4th round, or in the 6th round. So there is a lot of running backs here that I think are very interesting here for fantasy players, especially the ones that waited on running back, to get those running backs there when you already have those receivers, when you already have those elite tight ends. It's going to be compelling not only in Pros versus Joes, but in all the high stakes leagues with the FFPC Main Event, the Fantasy Pros Championship, so on and so forth there. Let's get into the 7th round. Mike Evans off the board to Jahoon Kim. That's the first receiver he's drafted since round 2. But he gets Jefferson and Higgins in the first 2 rounds. Now Mike Evans as his 3rd receiver in the 7th. Dak Prescott is the starting quarterback for Todd Burros right now from Sharp Football Analysis. DeAndre Swift to Jeff Tirabassi. Deontay Johnson and Marquise Brown. Deontay Johnson, the 2nd receiver drafted by Sigmund Bloom, and then Marquise Brown to John Terry after that. Damian Prince to Billy Musio. Evan Engram to Justin Bacon. That's his number 1 tight end. I just noticed that Billy doesn't have a tight end yet, although Rich Billy was praising the Dameon Pierce pick in the 7th round. So we'll see what Billy does at tight end here. Kadarius Toney to Bob Long, and then Cortland Sutton to Troy Wells, as those are both those players' number 3 wide receivers. 3 running backs to finish it out: Alvin Kamara, James Conner, and James Cook. Kamara to Evan Silva, James Conner to Josh Latz, and then James Cook to Alex Dunlap to finish off the 7th round. James Cook is kind of an interesting player too, as we look forward at what that Buffalo running back game is. I know Ferrell always gives me a hard time because I'm always so fascinated with the Buffalo running game, but I think getting the Bills running back pick right this year is going to be so important for everybody playing in the FFPC and everybody playing for $1 million in the Fantasy Pros Championship, the main event, what have you. Cook is the 2nd running back drafted by Alex Dunlap. Let's go to the guy who is drafting in the 2 spot tonight. You check out all his work for fantasy football at sharpfootballanalysis.com. You already follow him on Twitter, most likely. If you're not, you need to do it right now, at BestBallNFL. The incomparable Todd Burros. Todd, welcome in tonight, man.
Hola.
So you are looking at 7 rounds already down. We talked a little bit about the stacking earlier, and I think you explained that pretty good of why you did what you did. But how's the draft looking right now for you as you are about 1/3 of the way through?
Only one guy on my team I actually wanted to draft when I drafted him. The 2 spot is tough if value doesn't fall. And this Triviasi guy, who everyone talked up, he's taken the top guy on my board every single time. So, I mean, sometimes it's like that and you pivot and you do the best you can. But this is not my favorite team I've ever drafted.
So going into it, what did you think you were going to be? I mean, you obviously knew if Chase was available, you were going to take him. What were you thinking you were going to do in the 2nd round? I think you said you had your players all got sniped right in front of you.
Well, I mean, and same thing in the 4th and same thing in the 6th. I mean, basically, what the 2 is tough because it really is when you get someone as good as Chase, you really don't want to reach for anyone, and you're running into different, value valleys, and so you're in. You need someone to make a couple bad picks, and it's not happening. So. I am just muddling through and making the best picks that I can, using all the experience I have to try and, I've got a lot of good players, but it's like I don't have a lot of ETN. I don't have a lot of Devonta Smith. I probably should have taken someone other than Pittman, but I wanted one guy that I actually have been drafting. I do like Waller a lot this year, but you've got the injury situation. So it's and then I had to reach for Dak because quarterbacks were going way too early in this draft. And I'm when you're already not happy with your team, there was no one there that I thought to myself, oh, I got to take this guy. So I took Dak, to take some of the pressure off, hoping that later when you're not getting value, you want to stay positionally even so that you are in a position to take value later to try and make up for it. If like I'm not a big Deontay Johnson guy.
You're up next.
He would have been the guy that I would have taken. So, and I'm coming up again and again. The board is just not filled with names. That I'm just. I mean, this time the good news is Tirabassi can't snipe me this time because there's no one that I really want all that much.
So Todd, I'll let you look at it real quick because you're on the clock right now. So for everybody who is looking at this, you're looking at Todd Burros picking from the second pick, who's on the clock right now. Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Michael Pittman are his receivers. He's already got a backfield made up of Ramondre Stevenson or Travis Etienne. Darren Waller's the tight end. Dak Prescott is the quarterback as well. Todd, what are you thinking here at the 8-11?
The pick's going to be Samaje Perine. This is a full PPR, and Sean Payton has a long history of throwing to his backs, and Perine is going to be that guy this year. He's going to catch 60, 70 balls. And, I've got two running backs who could be a little hit or miss. Ramondre, should get a lot of receptions. Now I've got two guys who should get me a lot of receptions. And at the other positions, I was one of the tricks when you're at the corner is he was the only running back I really wanted there. But there's a couple wide receivers I would consider. There's a couple quarterbacks I would consider. So it gives me a lot of opportunity now to, by taking the running back, even though he wasn't the highest one on my board, I know at least I'll get someone I like coming back.
What do you make of I talked about, how back when best ball started, and Todd, you do as many best ball drafts as anybody. What do you make of the 4 wide receiver start from Billy Musio from Player Profiler?
I love Billy's team. Billy is crushing this. Billy and I have partnered on a lot of teams, and, he is not afraid to go late quarterback at all.
You're up next.
In fact, some people would say he likes doing that. So, Billy then got, as you mentioned, what has fallen a little bit is that second level running back. So to go 4 wide receivers and then come back with Dobbins and, 2 guys that I really like for best ball, Dobbins and Pierce. I mean, Billy is having a great draft. Who did he take in the 7th? He took Pierce in the 7th. Who is the
Tagovailoa in the 8th to go with Hill and Waddle.
I mean, Billy is just killing this draft. And he went 2 early quarterback. Herbert was the one I missed. So Billy is just absolutely crushing this draft.
Is it? I mean, is stacking worthwhile for Musio's team here? When he starts with to pair Dolphins receivers and then gets Tagovailoa, is it more important for a mega stack?
Stacking is always important. It's less important in something like this. Stacking adds points to your team if you do it right. So I've got an opportunity now to stack one of 2 players. I could either stack Pittman with Richardson or Waller with Daniel Jones. Richardson goes earlier, but Dak is a thrower. I'm going to go with Daniel Jones. I like Richardson. And if it was a bigger tournament, I would go with Richardson, but I think Jones has a better floor. So I'm going with Daniel Jones to go with Waller. Now I've got 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and a tight end. I'm set up very well for the back end of the draft. Hopefully, more people start falling to me that I like.
The second team tonight with 2 quarterbacks on his roster is Todd Burros from Sharp Football Analysis. Prescott and Daniel Jones. Prescott in the 7th, Daniel Jones in the 9th. The Jones-Waller stack will be interesting for sure. Todd, tell our viewers who maybe aren't familiar with your work or are familiar and want to know when you have more content coming out where they can check that out.
I do a weekly best ball article and podcast for Sharp Football Image. You can check that out. If you follow me, it's always put out. I also host my own Run the Daylight podcast. I haven't done one this year, but I have a feeling that I'm going to start doing a bunch of live drafts and posting them. So, and Wednesday night I've got the guy who started Sirius Satellite Radio Sports is now running the producing team for Sharp Football Analysis.
Ooh.
And I will be doing a in-depth interview. So he started in WFAN in New York. He then went and started Sirius. So I'm going to plan on obviously asking him a lot of things about his career. His name is Matt Deutsch. And then I also want to ask him questions, pertaining to, there's a lot of people out there who want to know what it takes to get ahead. This is a guy whose brain I want to pick to see, what his advice is. He's already given me one piece of advice that I thought was amazingly helpful. And I'm really looking forward to that interview on Wednesday or Thursday.
We will be definitely waiting for the audio for that. Todd, thank you so much. We appreciate you drafting tonight. Good luck the rest of the way, and good luck trying to take down this league so you can get that free main event entry next year, man.
Yeah, thank you so much as always for having me. It's a great contest, and it's always a pleasure to be part of it.
Todd Burros from Sharp Football Analysis, ladies and gentlemen. Follow him on Twitter at BestBallNFL. By the way, Matt Deutsch, a guy that is near and dear to my heart, given that he's my boss at the Better Sports Network. You can check out my show, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, every Thursday on the Better Sports Network, bettersports.com, as well as all the Better Sports social channels, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and the FFPC social channels as well. That's at 7 o'clock Thursday nights. Let's bring in my good buddy, J. Ferrell Elliott, the commissioner, the definitive commissioner, the commissioner to rule them all from the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Welcome in, Ferrell. So good to have you on, man. Good evening.
Buddy, I wish that there was greatness to my lateness, but I can only tell you that I am tardy. That's all.
That was my fault, too, because I sent you the wrong link.
The first thing I've noticed here is that most of the Joes are waiting on quarterback, as would be suggested, unless you go get one of the top three, the guys in the top tier. And the pros are already doubling up. So, yeah, okay. That's what I.
So let's get into this. We got a comment in the YouTube chat, and if you are just joining us right now, Michael Heinitz wants to know the league settings. This is a 20-round FFPC best ball slim, so there's no waivers, there's no lineup setting in this at all. You're looking at the standard FFPC starting lineup: a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a tight end, 2 flexes, a kicker, no kickers and defenses in this format. Beg your pardon. And you're also looking at tight end premium scoring in this as well. So 1.5 points per catch for tight ends. So let's get into let's see what round. We just finished the 9th round here. Let's get into that here, Ferrell. AJ Dillon joins Jahoon Kim's team here. A loaded backfield now. He's already got 4 running backs through 9 rounds. AJ Dillon joining Walker, Sanders, and Pacheco. I saw the Daniel Jones pick from Todd Burros there. Gabe Davis is another receiver that is joining Jeff Tirabasi's squad. Remember, he started off with 2 running backs and a tight end in the first 3 rounds, and now he has pounded the receiver position. 5 picks in the last 6 picks for him. Our wide receivers, Michael Thomas off the board to Sigmund Bloom, Dalton Schultz and Tyler Higbee off the board after that. Schultz to John Terry, Tyler Higbee to Billy Muzio as his number 1 tight end. Jordan Addison speeds his way at the 907 to Justin Bacon there as the wide receiver 44, followed by Khalil Herbert, the 3rd running back chosen by Bob Lung from Big Guy Fantasy Sports. Russell Wilson, the 2nd quarterback drafted by Troy Wells. The rookie Quentin Johnston is joining Mike Williams, his real-life teammate, on Evan Silva's squad from the 10 spot tonight. Rashad Bateman, who is now off the PUP list or whatever he was on, the reserve list. He's reported to training camp in Baltimore. All things good there. Rashad Bateman off the board at the 9-11. Anthony Richardson ends up going in the 9th round, not to Todd Burros, but he goes to Alex Dunlap at the 9-12 at the 14th as the 14th quarterback off the board. Ferrell, I know we just went through the 9th round. I do want to talk about an 8th round pick here in Javonte Williams. He was the first running back off the board in the 8th round, the 801, running back 30. We got the news today that he is not going to be placed on the preseason PUP. It honestly seems like his knee is healing a lot faster than at least I gave it credit for. I didn't think he'd be in this spot this early in camp, and yet here we are. Are you a little surprised that he still was an 8th round pick tonight? I feel like he should be going a little bit higher based on the news we heard this morning.
It's a Sunday news feed. Any other day, hey, if this draft was on Monday, he would go higher. He'll go higher on the 2s and 3s, pros versus Joes, Balky. It's great value for team number 12.
I like the pick. I like it quite a bit there. In the 8th round, it makes a lot of sense. What's interesting here is Troy Wells. Well, no, that's not interesting because Dalvin Cook went after Javonte Williams. I look at some of these other running backs that went in the 7th round, like Alvin Kamara, James Conner I kind of like, but James Cook, and I guess Dunlap ended up getting Cook and Williams. It didn't really make a difference of what order he was picking them there. But I think Williams is in for probably a 2-round bump as we get into the main event, the more pros versus Joes drafts, the fantasy pros drafts that are going on this week. I think he's going to be bumped up 2 rounds. The fact that the preseason pup, what a lot of people I think don't understand is like, this is not the regular season pup. Like they can just take you off whenever they want. And this is a situation right now where if Williams starts showing out in preseason, I mean, now you're talking about the sky potentially being the limit where he could maybe shoot up to a 3rd round pick or a 4th round pick in early September. I love that selection right there. I think now is the time to pound Javonte Williams. What do you make of Elijah Moore, who went in the 8th round here tonight? Sigmund Bloom from Footballguys ends up drafting him as his number 3 receiver. I've seen him steamed up a little bit. I've seen a lot of pundits writing about Elijah Moore and talking about Elijah Moore. But this could be a potential breakout guy in Cleveland with Deshaun Watson this year.
He will be. He brings 2 skills that a lot of these receivers don't have. He can beat you in the short game. He's very, very physical. Plus, he can get downfield. Now he has a quarterback that is looking for the big comeback year. I love Elijah Moore. The fact that he's in the 8th round this early, I would encourage anyone who's drafting early in any of the main events, any of the slow drafts, to get busy with Elijah Moore. That's a fantastic draft pick there in the 8th round. He shouldn't be going that late.
Probably not. I think you make a strong case there for that. The 9th round is complete. I want to save that for the show. I want to save it for a different show. What about Anthony Richardson? Are you surprised he's not going a little bit higher, given that this is you only pay out 1 spot in this league? You know what I mean? Like, and he's a total pick to win guy, and that he went as the 14th quarterback off the board to Alex Dunlap, who already had a quarterback on his team.
Yeah, I don't think that's a very good pick at all by Mr. Dunlap. But we'll first of all, Richardson, it hits a roulette pick because none of us know how long Gardner Minshew is going to be the placeholder in that position. No one knows how long they're going to let this player marinate on the bench, so to speak. I hope that he's the starter from day one. He should be the starter from day one, but none of us know. And then we don't know exactly what we're going to see. I think he's going to be fantastic. But this drafter's already committed himself to a quarterback that he's going to start every week. He doesn't need Richardson here. He's never going to start Richardson over Lamar Jackson. So that's not a good pick for him.
10th round is also in the books. Dalton Kincaid, the first tight end drafted by Alex Dunlap. He gets him tonight at the 10:01. Jackson Smith-Njigba joins Josh Latz's team. Geno Smith backing up Josh Allen for Evan Silva. Romeo Dobbs on Troy Wells' team at the 10:04. Zach Charbonnet is the 4th running back drafted by Bob Lung, and then Kirk Cousins is the backup quarterback to Trevor Lawrence here as he gets his 2nd quarterback at the 10:06. Devon Achane to the 10:07. Greg Dulcich, John Terry waits until the 9th round to draft the tight end, his tight end, and then he gets Dulcich right away. Schultz and Dulcich are his top 2 tight ends this year. Jared Goff backing up Justin Fields for Sigmund Bloom. Damian Harris, Sky Moore, and Aaron Rodgers wrap up the 10th round. Harris to Tirabassi, Moore to Burros, and then Rodgers going to Kim. In this round, Ferrell, forgive me if we've talked about this before, but I still look back at this Devon Achane thing. There are so many people excited about what he can do this year. And at the same time, the Dalvin Cook thing looms heavy over what Achane and Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert could be this year. Achane in the 10th round, to borrow your phrase, is that the spot that you want to be in business with Achane?
I don't think so. I want to see what happens with the distribution of the rock somewhat in the preseason, and I want to see who's healthy week 1. I believe that these players that this coach had in San Francisco, I believe he is linked to them both in the head and the heart, and I think he's going to play these players, and I think they're going to get plenty of touches. There's too much committee going on in this backfield. We used to complain about the New England Patriots backfield because there's just too much going on. You can't really figure out which player to play. Hey, look, I don't want to try to pick out which one of these guys to start. And I think that probably the old players are better picks much later in the draft.
Interesting. Okay. Elijah Mitchell joining Jahoon Kim's backfield. Ferrell, if you look at that squad from the one spot tonight, knowing that he got all those targets from Jefferson, Higgins, and Hawkinson, and then pounding the running backs after that, what do you make of that strategy? Because he's got a good collection of running backs, despite not drafting one until the 4th round. He has Kenneth Walker, Sanders, Pacheco. This is going to sound like blasphemy, but I'm not the biggest fan of A.J. Dillon, even though I am in the shadows of Lambeau Field here in Northeast Wisconsin. And then Elijah Mitchell, where if anything happens to McCaffrey, all of a sudden Mitchell's looking pretty tasty in San Francisco as well. I like what Jahoon Kim did here, not only for the start of his draft in the first 3 picks, but the way he's assembled his running backs as well.
Yeah, he's played and hasn't had enough running backs. And so he's coming back this year and he's saying, I'm going to get running backs. And I think that it would be real interesting to watch what he does like between round 12 and 17. I hope that he will look at some receivers that I have on my list of guys that I think are great values there and really could play very, very well towards the end of the year. I'm not a big fan of Burks, especially with what just happened down there, although I will accept his argument that Tannehill and Hopkins there will make Burks a better player. But yeah, this is a good team. I don't know, Balky, what other running backs could he have got besides Mitchell?
When you're talking about Elijah Mitchell going at the 11:01, Brian Robinson was available after that. I mean, if you want to take a starter, maybe a name only in Washington, you could have gone with him there. Obviously, you could have gotten the pass catcher for now in Kansas City and Jerick McKinnon, and then Kendre Miller, a guy who, again, has some obstacles to overcome, not only on the depth chart, but also with his own injury there that's going on in New Orleans right now. So I look at those 3 players. You could make a case that they should have been the pick over Mitchell, but you'd also make the case that they have too many warts. And Gimme Mitchell, a guy who really showed out when he was the starter, and now is a McCaffrey injury away from being pretty significant on that offense.
Yeah, and I think he's a contributor even with a healthy McCaffrey. So I can buy into Mitchell. I very much like him as a player. You know, I gave our team 11 here, our team 12 here, a little razz for going 2 quarterbacks. But one of the things that's team number 7, Balky, who is that?
That's Justin Bacon, FFPC Joe.
Well, FFPC Joe is tearing it up because I love what he did here. I think that might be in the 7th round, probably right on target for Trevor Lawrence. It's a situation where ascending quarterback with a team full of excellent receivers, probably Ridley, who went where did Ridley end up in this draft, Balky? Do you see him?
Calvin Ridley was the 405 tonight, wide receiver 17 to Bob Lung.
So there's a 405 receiver that I think will catch over 1,000 yards this year. And, you know, when I ask you, Balky, I want you to tell me, Jacksonville Jaguars, how many pass plays did they have over 20 yards last year, postseason?
Game? Boy. I'd say 22.
Throw it out there. How about 3? 3 passes over
20 last year. That's crazy.
And that's what Ridley is going to change. Yeah, they had all those receivers, but 3 passes over 20 yards. Now we come back and see that his second quarterback, and now he's got a balance at the position because he's taking Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins is you know, he's a 5,000-yard passing quarterback. Mm-hmm. I don't understand why this player is available this late and going behind some of these other quarterbacks, because you're in a situation where he's got the number one receiver. He's got one of the top-tier tight ends. They will throw the ball to the back, and he's going to throw the ball approximately 600 times. You put Herbert, Mahomes, I'm missing one of them, but you put these guys on the field, these guys are going to be putting the ball up in the air. And so congratulations on that. He's cornered two very, very top quarterbacks. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be him on Sunday morning, though. He'd be switching them out back and forth. You know, it's what's that phrase you have, Foggy, about thinking too long?
Think long, think wrong.
Yeah.
That's
so, you know, you've got to make your decision on his quarterbacks on Thursday and live with it.
That's true. Now the thing is with this format, because it is a best ball, I think it changes a few things. And when I look at Bacon's team here at the 7th spot, not only does he have that Lawrence Cousins thing at quarterback, which I think could be very lucrative as far as points go on a week-to-week basis, he does have a couple of stacks there, Lawrence and Engram. And then he gets Addison in the 9th, and then he gets Cousins in the 10th. So pretty valuable to have those two quarterbacks prior to the 11th round. Then we look at the other side of the coin, Ferrell. Team 3, Cornfits, Jeff Tirabassi. Derek Carr is his first quarterback he chooses tonight. He gets him at the 11:03. Is that a strategy you can get behind in this best ball format, right? Where you wait and you grab your elite tight end, you pound the running backs and the receivers, and then you figure out quarterback later. I know he was a Las Vegas Raider, and he is no more because he's in New Orleans. But your thoughts on that strategy from the 3 spot?
The thing about Carr is, and Tirabassi and I are probably in the same boat with this player. You see him do a lot of really nice things, and this is the perfect format for him because you're going to come here. I think Tirabassi's probably identified a couple quarterbacks that he likes late, probably a couple of the young guys that he thinks will be ascending players towards the end of the year. I wouldn't be surprised to see him pick one here or definitely on the way back around. But, the best ball format allows there it is. And, okay.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that pick there?
I like it. I like it a lot.
So he's taking risky plays of players in positions that should pan out, and I believe both these players will pan out. They're not 600 attempts a year quarterbacks, but they are guys that should reach 4,000 yards apiece. And on the right, if luck follows him, he'll be able to put one of those as his top scoring quarterbacks. Yeah, he's going to be all right. He knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing for sure. I want to shift our focus all the way back over to Team 12, who we were talking about briefly before. Alex Dunlap from rosterwatch.com had the final pick of the first round, and he ends up going with 4 receivers in the 6th round. But I think what's most exciting to me, and I know you don't like the Richardson pick, but he's gone with 4 straight rookies here from rounds 9 through 12. Richardson, Kincaid, Laporta, and Kendre Miller. Ferrell, when's the last time we've done any of these live draft coverages? You draft a ton too. When's the last time you've seen a team relying on 2 rookie tight ends for their first 2 picks? I don't know if I've ever seen it before, but I got to tell you, in this format, I don't dislike it for Alex Dunlap here with Kincaid and Laporta. We saw the blurb come out from the Detroit beat writer saying that Laporta is going to be involved early and often in that offense, and no Jameson Williams till mid-October. Man, Alex Dunlap can make some waves with this team. I already talked about the Javonte Williams pick. I really like that as well, but this is a big upside team right now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the veteran tight end that he puts with these groups, because both these young players are going to be playing better at the end of the year. Rookies, they used to come into the league and you would say that rookie, he'll probably hit the wall with his performance, but it's not like that. It's not the same kind of game anymore. And coaches are bringing along rookies, especially as you get past that bye week. Really going to put more in on the offense. Now, Laporta, if you watch Laporta in the combine, you realize he's a high 4.6 guy, which is very, very good for his size. He can block too. That's going to keep him on the field. Kincaid is a future superstar in this league. So these guys are going to get off to good starts. So yes, I got no problem. I've got no problem with the 2 tight ends. Kendre Miller, I would rather do something else. I don't really know exactly where he is physically, and I think there's better players that he could take advantage of there.
Sigmund Bloom's team from the 4 spot tonight. I feel like I might say this every year when Bloom drafts his team, but it always seems like he gets an elite tight end early, and it's usually Travis Kelce because he usually takes one in the first round. But he gets his elite quarterback, the 6th quarterback off the board is Justin Fields. He gets him in the 4th round, and in between those are his 2 running backs in Pollard and Henry. You think he's done enough at wide receiver here in rounds 5 through 13? London, Deontay Johnson. We talked about Elijah Moore a little bit. Michael Thomas, Zay Flowers, Tyler Boyd. Is that enough, or does he still need to be hammering this position given how he did not have a receiver on his team until the 5th round?
I think those are pretty good receivers, especially Johnson, who may have a better year this coming year than he had last year. And Zay Flowers, I'm a big believer in this player. I think this is the most Tyreek Hill-esque player in the draft, and I like him better than a lot of these other rookies that are going higher. Tyler Boyd is an old steady Eddie. I don't particularly think in this format you're going to get a lot of scores out of him. In the case of Justin Fields, this is a quarterback we're going to say, hey, his feet are so good. He's going to do so much with the ball running. And when you have a quarterback like that, you're just rooting for him to run all the time. Chicago Bears threw the ball 22 times a game last year. And I don't know what you're going to do with that. And I don't know what DJ Moore and Mooney and Kmet. And somebody asked me the other night, why are you so down on Kmet? I'm not particularly down on Kmet. But we just told you all the quarterback's going to throw the ball 600 times. Justin Fields is going to throw it 350. So that's a lot of footwork that Justin Fields has to make up. Jared Goff's the right kind of quarterback to put with a Justin Fields because there's a guy that's going to be slinging it. And I'm not sure exactly where the quarterbacks are on the rest of the board, but I'm going to find another guy that's going to sling it and throw it and put it in the air and get it downfield. But, yeah, I like his wide receivers. I think based on where he drafted them, he got the most he could possibly get. And tip of the cap on Michael Thomas. I think that's a polarizing player for fantasy football. And the public, I believe, is downgrading Thomas way too much.
That's a topic for our show coming up this Friday if we can get to it because we always have so much content to get to. But I want to explore that Michael Thomas thing a little bit more this coming Friday. Once again, all 12 of these teams in this FFPC Pros versus Joe's draft that we're covering tonight will be shooting for a first place finish because that means they will get a 2024 free entry into the FFPC Main Event. Remember, if you square away your 2023 FFPC Main Event entry by midnight Pacific time tomorrow, you're going to find out where you're drafting, what slot you have by July 31st. So you can spend the entire month of August figuring out how you want to attack that position as you go for $1 million grand prize when you sign up at myffpc.com. Bob Lung from Big Guy Fantasy Sports is in the 8th spot tonight. He drafts Dallas Goedert in the 5th round. He gets Mike Gesicki at the 1308, tight end 23. Ferrell, he is no longer shackled by blocking in the Mike McDaniel's offense or in the Mike McDaniel offense where he's on the sideline. He's just not even getting on the field. What do you think about Gesicki's value here in the 13th round, man? FFPC premium format, a tight end premium format. I really like the value that Bob Lung got here, and I think he should be going higher.
Everybody that's casually even associated with fantasy football, that's one of the things that they know this year. Gesicki's a very good player. He's returning to the coaching staff, which knows him from college, and he has a chance to blossom. And despite the fact, and we talked about it on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour multiple times, despite the fact that he was in a mix of lesser talented tight ends in Miami, he was always able to find the end zone. I think he had 5 touchdown catches last year. So Gesicki will be a force between the 20s for the Patriots. I like it very well. And, there's a quarterback that hasn't been drafted there in Mac Jones. And, he's better than the public thinks he is. And Gesicki's going to help him be that better player. Balky, I just looking at this thing, the screen's away from me now, but just amazes me the running back talent that was available in this draft in the 3rd round. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, I touched on it earlier. Obviously Josh Jacobs is falling a little bit because you have, the potential contract situation. But Breece Hall falling into the 3rd round because of the ACL question. Derrick Henry, people are just waiting for him to fall off the cliff, and Sigmund Bloom's betting on one more year with him in Tennessee. Ramondre Stevenson and Jahmyr Gibbs have been getting steamed up. Some of these guys, several of these guys might be 2nd-round picks in like a month or so, given, everything that we know about them and how positive people are being about them right now. So I think some of these 3rd-round running backs might be available in the 2nd round in a month, but not necessarily in the 3rd round. Rashawn Johnson went off the board here just briefly. I want to touch on this at the 13-11 to Josh Latz. And I look at the Bears situation. Ferrell, you kind of touched on it. They want to throw more in Chicago this year. Fields was a prolific passer at Ohio State. They added DJ Moore. Cole Kmet should be in for another big year. What's his name? Darnell Mooney's coming off the injury. They added Chase Claypool last year. Everything should tell us that they are going to throw more this year. But I'm still of the opinion, I think you are too, it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. And that's why I think Rashawn Johnson makes a lot of sense in the 13th round. I'm not necessarily the biggest Khalil Herbert guy in the world, which I think kind of makes me a Rashawn Johnson guy. I like this pick in the 13th round for Josh Latz's squad as his number 5 running back.
Okay, and I can buy into that too, especially, I suppose, he needed a running back. If we want to talk more about Chicago, we can talk about the fact that the ball is in that quarterback's hands, and he makes the decisions when to take off with it. And he makes the decisions to go through the progressions. I believe that Chase Claypool is an excellent player, and he really shouldn't be drafted. We're going how many rounds here tonight? We're going
20 rounds. 20 rounds.
Swim in 20. I don't know if he comes off the board tonight. So I don't I just don't see this in the passing game for Chicago. So yes, perhaps something in the rushing game with Johnson as a back makes really, really good sense.
Evan Silva from Establish the Run is picking in the 10 spot right next to Josh Latz tonight. And he hit up some receivers early. He got Diggs in the first round to go with his Josh Allen, who we got in the second round. Metcalf, Mike Williams is on they're on his team, as well as Quentin Johnston. He gets Zay Jones in the 13th. I do want to talk a little bit about Jonathan Mingo here and how he fits into Silva's squad. Mingo, obviously a rookie, a guy that I was kind of excited about in my rookie drafts because he was slipping a little bit. But the more I read, the more I watched, the more I listened to, I don't want to say I soured on him because I still think he's interesting. But he has a lot of potential in Carolina this year with no real established number 1 receiver. I guess you could say Adam Thielen is going to be the guy. I don't know if he is going to be the guy. I mean, he's really getting up there in years. But Mingo is a guy that in this format for Evan Silva's team makes a lot of sense here, because if that guy does blow up and if he does do good, now all of a sudden you're looking at this wide receiver core that Silva's established. Throw Mingo into that, could be the best receiver core in this league.
In college, he was a little bit banged up and he didn't get to show his full skill set, perhaps week in and week out. It's another player coming from Ole Miss. Carolina seems to like that Ole Miss connection. I don't see any reason not to give Mingo a shot. I think we're looking at a few big games based on speed. He's a fast player, and you can see the speed on the field. He plays fast. So I can go all in with Mingo here. I don't know what you're hearing about him, Balky, not to like, other than the fact, he's going to be with his rookie quarterback. But hey, I'll tell you exactly what Thielen is going to be with these young players. He's going to be the guy that shows leadership. He'll teach these other receivers not only how to take physical reps, but mental reps in practice. That's a reason that you should like some of your dart throws with Carolina players that are going to be pass catchers, is because Thielen is there.
Todd Burros from Sharp Football Analysis, we talked with him earlier in the broadcast, and he just took Jelani Woods with his 1502 pick, and he said he probably should have went somewhere other than tight end because he already had Darren Waller in the 5th. He already grabbed Chiga Okonkwo in the 11th. And tight end, he's been I just did what show were we doing with him where he popped in? It was a FFPC live draft coverage show on a couple of Tuesdays ago. And he said, like, the 3rd tier of tight ends this year, it's really good. Tight end is deep. He had 2, but Ferrell, he just could not quit Jelani Woods. Your thoughts on Jelani Woods in Indianapolis this year with Anthony Richardson?
Still waters run deep for the Jelani Woods love. It's hard to not see that. It's when you see that big body running across the field, it's hard not to say, hey, why doesn't this guy catch so many balls? And big red zone target. I wish I knew why a team doesn't have a package to make sure they get Jelani Woods the ball 6 times a game. Is it because they can't trust him to be in the place that he's supposed to be when he's in the route tree? I don't know what the issue is, but I will be glad when the production meets the physicality. That would be a very, very happy day for Jelani Woods. And if it's not soon, he's going to become only a memory because he's not much of a contributor anywhere else on the field, such as special teams and that type of thing.
One of the favorite teams in the YouTube chat tonight has been Player Profiler's Billy Musio. Rich Bill, pointing out that he got 2 more solid picks here in the 14th and 15th. Devin Singletary is his number 4 running back. He's got Tyler Conklin as his number 3 tight end. And listen, Billy is super smart. I've done shows with him before. I commission and facilitate a lot of his drafts, even live in Las Vegas as well. But I look, and here's the cold water I'll throw on. And maybe it's not cold water. Maybe it's lukewarm. But I look at the running backs on this team. I thought he would pound them more after he got those 4 receivers early. But it's only been Dobbins and Pierce in the 6th and 7th. A-Chain we talked about in the 10th. And then Singletary and Zamir White. I mean, this could work out, Ferrell. But I do feel like as he enters the season, I worry about the running back being deep enough for him to compete for 17 weeks.
Billy's throwing a lot of darts at the board, and you can't argue with these individual players. The way he's putting them together leaves me to question a little bit. Rondale Moore is a classic underperformer at receiver. We've already talked about the issues of being a Bears receiver. Yes, I love Singletary, and I think this is one of his better picks that he's made. I think he's a little old at tight end. I like the first tight end he took is the one that I like least. And we all wait for Everett to have the breakthrough year and climb above what he did last year, which I think was 47 catches. Yeah, there's a lot of hope on this roster. And, I guess you had to have 2 quarterbacks in this format, and maybe even a third is forthcoming. But, I just don't like the way he's put it together. But you know what? He's he's got a pretty impressive resume. So I'll just wait and see the results. And but when a guy like Billy puts together a team like this, you say, well, maybe I need to go look at some of these other players again.
Right.
Let's at least say one thing. I love Singletary where he got him.
Yeah, I do too. I like that pick there in the 14th round. And then now he's basically locked up the Texans ground game, right? With Pierce, and Singletary there. So it makes a lot of sense. I want to get back to a pick that Jeff Tirabassi just made in the 16th round here at the 16-10, wide receiver 74, Marvin Mims. Ferrell, this is a guy that I keep hearing more and more positive things about in Denver with Russell Wilson, Sean Payton, and obviously Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy are still there. But your thoughts on Marvin Mims? How big of a deal is he going to be this year for fantasy football? Is he going to make an impact right away, or are we going to have to wait a year to figure out what his true value is to Denver?
I don't think we are, because it's a new coaching staff, new offensive coordinator, new ideas about what they expect out of the quarterback. I'm surprised Mims was still available here. When we see him in the preseason, he won't be available this late. I don't know. You're looking probably at a 50 catch, 650, 700 yard guy with maybe 4 to 6 touchdowns. But in the 16th round, why not?
I think Dave the Dizzle Gerzak letting his thoughts known on Cortland Sutton. Right?
He never has been a fan of Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton is trying to be a player, Dave. He's trying really hard to do what's expected from him. Good Lord, someone drafted Hunter Henry.
What's the old line, Ferrell? I'm trying to think of it, where I think it was a football one, and somebody asked the head coach of their team, and he's like, oh, the effort is there. They're trying, very trying. And that's what Cortland Sutton is. Very trying.
I think Dave would, and there's a lot of guys that you will see this, but Old Scout once coined a phrase with me, and I use it often, is he fails slowly. And that's a good one. Failing slowly.
That's good. I'm telling you, that's I'm adding it to my list right now. Failing slowly is going to be one of my KFFSC teams this year. Team names for sure. I want to let's get into the other picks of the 16th round. Normally I'd talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but Aiden LaCourrier is not on the program tonight. So and I think he might be joining us either Tuesday or Wednesday. So I'll save the Clyde Edwards-Helaire talk for then. Zamir White to Billy Musio here. You tell me about this Josh Jacobs situation, because Zamir White, I feel like, was a player I was high on last year in my rookie drafts, and I still have him on several of my dynasty leagues. You tell me. I mean, is the Jacobs thing about potentially sitting out games for real? And even if it's not, I mean, how valuable is Zamir White going to be in Las Vegas this year as a one injury away type guy late?
Well, he'll sit over there on the sidelines and pay attention. And that's important because Josh Jacobs is a player that's very, very difficult to get off the field. We saw Josh Jacobs not be the Josh Jacobs he was last year, and it was because in previous years he's been a little banged up, and you cannot get him off the field. And, yeah, the Dizzle breaks it down. He says it's a lottery ticket. Mm-hmm. And sure it is, because he's a capable player in an offense that's going to have a pretty good rushing attack. But Jacobs will approach his financial condition a little different than what some of the other players and the way some of the other players are doing. That's my thoughts.
I think, and you are a Raiders guy, which is why I asked you about that, to get straight from the Raiders' mouth, essentially.
I like the team, but it's only the interns out there that are returning my phone calls now.
Oh,
the interns and a guy named Curtis Knox.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Some guy called me the other day. I said, "What year are you at a UNLV?" He goes, "How you know I'm in college?" I thought, "This is great."
I feel like we've done John Terry a disservice tonight. He's generated so much YouTube chat. It's mostly heckling from his friend and competitor Biplab Mandel in the YouTube chat.
Are those two guys fighting again?
No, John's not even defending himself. He's too busy drafting. But okay. Biplab is taking advantage and tearing John Terry's team down as much. In fact, he said a big reason that Billy Musio's team is so good is because he's catching all the value that John Terry is leaving him from the 5 spot tonight. But John Terry, a guy who's won more than one national tournament over the years with the FFPC, won a ton of money, easily into the 6 figures. He's drafting from the 5 spot tonight. And I want to ask you about his approach here. He doesn't take tight end until the 9th round. This is kind of the approach that Alex Dunlap from Roster Watch took at the 12. He doesn't take a tight end until the 9th round. And then he gets Schultz and Dulcich in back-to-back picks there. Now, I understand that's not the most attractive duo in the world, but when you consider that waiting to draft that duo allowed him to draft Barkley, Akers, and Antonio Gibson, and all those receivers in Cooper Kupp, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Marquise Brown, and one of the best quarterbacks out there, Jalen Hurts. Is that a viable strategy in that format? How do you rate John Terry's team, knowing that he waited on tight end, but still got Schultz, Dulcich, and now Jake Ferguson in the 17th round, who could start for Dallas?
I like those tight ends. I like Ferguson pick down here. I think he really he picked the proverbial pocket of these drafters here in Pros versus Joe's one. I'm a bigger fan of Schultz than apparently everyone else here is, especially the professor. I will tell you, Professor, since Schultz is no longer a Cowboy, I believe what you've got here is a player that knows how to run a route and has very, very good hands. And so, we're dealing in a situation where you take Cooks out of Houston. You now have some interesting, you've got the little guy Bell, the little receiver. You've got Nico Collins, and you've got Schultz, which is a steadying effect on what a young quarterback is going to need. And we're talking about this team. This is a 4 or 5 win football team, I think. But for fantasy purposes, I really like some of these players, and Schultz is the one that I like the most, especially early. Compared with Dulcich, there's a player that will come on later in the year, and Ferguson. There's unlimited potential for what that player can do. So yeah, I like this team a lot.
Ferrell, our good buddy Josh Latz and Packers fan Josh Latz from the 11 spot tonight just drafted Hunter Renfrow at the 17-11. He's the 77th receiver off the board. The Raiders have essentially, and I know this is the quick and dirty, they've essentially exchanged Darren Waller in that offense for Jacoby Myers. Is this a negative, positive, or just a net zero impact on Hunter Renfrow's stats for this year compared to where they were at last year?
Hunter Renfrow's a big question mark for me. What happened to him last year was what I've been waiting for it to happen during his career. His body, he's tough as nails, but his body began to be bad luck with what he had. And he played hurt. He played hurt with some of the things that, we didn't hear about through the media. And I'm just not so sure that so much of the offense is going to run through Hunter Renfrow this year. So I'm not particularly in favor of that pick. It's interesting to see what the Raiders, when they let Waller move. I thought it was because they had the tight end Mojo, who then surfaced in free agency in New Orleans, had an illness and seems to be recuperating. It's the short inside receiving game for the Raiders is one of the most intriguing things to watch in the preseason. But you know what? You've got a quarterback that's coming in there that can take advantage of every short passing slant route, rushing receiver. And so you asked about Myers. That's why I like Myers.
That's why you like Myers and Renfro. I think like the thing is like I don't know how you feel about this, Ferrell, but do you feel like you can get lottery ticket receivers this late in the draft? To me, like this is the time where you stump for those running backs, or do you see it a different way in a best ball format that's just 20 rounds long?
Yeah, I don't like either of these receivers here because we've seen what we've got from Woods. Woods delivered my victory of the steak dinner bet where you'll be accompanying us, Balky, last year when he out-received Burks over in Tennessee. And that's what we're going to see with Woods in his career now. There are some very attractive young receivers that I'm sure are still available that I could find better than those two receivers. But we're gonna straighten Josh out when he comes to Kentucky, and he'll have 20 rounds of excellence real soon.
You know, Todd Burros just chimed in at the 18-11 tonight. He said, "Are they really going to leave me? Likely." Which I had. Yeah, now I don't have it up anymore. But that's exactly what happened. He took likely at the 18-11. Ferrell, it's one thing to really like a player, and it's another thing to like load up on a position, because he talked about maybe I shouldn't have taken Jelani Woods because I already had two tight ends. Now he's got four tight ends with Waller, Chigakonko, Woods, and Likely. There's a lot of upside here, but would you be willing to soak in 20% of your roster towards tight ends in this format?
I don't know, but if you're going to do it, if as Dave says, if you're buying lottery tickets, this is the player to do it with. And when this player came out of school, I was just so enchanted with his skill set. I couldn't wait to where he was going to land, and then his landing spot didn't suggest great fantasy football. He's going to have to. There's going to have to be an injury to the number one for him to step up. But yeah, okay. You know what? If you're in the FFPC, you should love tight ends. So let's do it. You know what?
Yeah, let's do it. I like it. We have not talked about Troy Wells' team a whole lot from the 9 spot tonight, Ferrell. I want to get into it a little bit right now. Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, and Mac Jones are his quarterbacks. He also has Kittle, Kmet, and Fant at tight end. Would you be okay with, and again, I know team structure plays into this and where you pick guys, but he's got 3 tight ends and 3 quarterbacks. I don't know if I see that often done in an FFPC best ball slim like this, to dedicate essentially 30% of your roster to those 2 positions.
Well, yeah, and Kittle is one of my favorite players in the league on and off the field. He's done a lot of things for the game, the community. I look forward to seeing what he does even after he retires, but they ask him to do so much with the 49ers. It's like a broken record every time I say that. So in our fantasy football, it's difficult for him. There's Evan Ingrams that can outscore him that are not anywhere near the kind of football player he is. We've already talked about Kmet. Fant's been a big question mark for me. Those are not my favorite mix of tight ends. He got Mac Jones, and so I like Mac Jones a little bit better than some of the guys going in front of him. And who's his other 2 quarterbacks, Balky?
You are looking at Russell Wilson at the 909 and Deshaun Watson at the 604.
Okay, well, I think Watson's going to carry the day for him. So, yeah, but you want to have 3, so why not?
You do want to have 3 in this format. Okay. All right. I know that's not that it's polarizing, but I think a lot of people would say like they'll just roll with like 1 or 2 guys. I guess I shouldn't say that, because I have heard a lot of people say that they'll take a third on this format as well. John Terry in the at the 1808 tonight as his number. Oh my goodness, what is it? Number 7 running back. It's Eric Gray, the rookie in New York. And obviously, we're not only paying attention because he's a rookie, we're also paying attention because he could be the backup which we want to focus on in this type of format. And we also want to pay attention to it because Saquon Barkley is involved in a contract dispute right now. Ferrell, is Eric Gray the pick over Matt Breida in New York right now? Not to mention they also have James Robinson there now too.
Oh yeah, I think so. And you know what, I would I would probably go Robinson there. Robinson's got a lot of bad press lately, but you know what? He's got 1,000-yard rushing seasons, and I've seen him at the goal line keep those legs moving, score the ball when a lot of other players wouldn't. And hey, Josh just woke up at the wide receiver position. That's all I'm saying in the 19th round.
This is going to be a recurring theme, I think, over the course of drafting season, which we are, coming up. We're passing the mid portion of drafting season, I think, right now. But my God, the Giants receivers, Ferrell, in the last couple of rounds here, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, and Darius Slayton all go in the 19th round. What was the other Giants receiver? Oh, Isaiah Hodgins falls. He doesn't go until the 16th round. Mm-hmm. At this point, I mean, are we just, is there value there? I guess is my question, because so many high stakes players have just eliminated the Giants receivers as targets on a whole. And they have an expensive quarterback. They have a running back who could be holding out. And they have a tight end, granted, for all the special things he does on the field. Sometimes he's not available because of injury. I'm just wondering, what we're doing here with Giants receivers and drafts.
Well, they're
Paris Campbell, as Rich Billiou points out, too. Paris Campbell as well as another one.
Rich is following those Giants. He's going to start talking about Sterling Shepard real soon. Hyatt. I love Hyatt. Dizzle loves Hyatt. When Dizzle didn't get a chance to watch much college football, but he knows a whole lot about Hyatt, and he knew it early. It's a player, route running and speed. All of their ability to get in the end zone and to score us a 6-point fantasy touchdown is, I think, based on having Barkley on the field to move the chains. But yes, you have to. Daniel Jones went higher in this draft than a lot of quarterbacks. These receivers, the proverbial cream is going to rise to the top. Our pal Zach gets Wan'Dale Robinson in the 19th round. This was an 11th, 10th round pick last year at the main event. The skill set is the same skill set once he bounces back from his injury. I think this receiver group is underrated, but I think a lot of the reason that I would keep them at these distant top end numbers is that Barkley is no longer there. You bring Barkley back, I like these receivers better. And I'm going to go ahead and figure out that it's Hyatt, Hodgins, and Wan'Dale Robinson are going to be the three that are going to do very well. And, there's another giant tight end that nobody's picking that could catch balls. It could catch more balls than some of these other tight ends.
That's also, and this is what Todd Burros is saying, is this last tier of tight ends are so valuable this year, maybe more valuable than they ever have been in the FFPC before. Let's talk about a couple of Packers receivers here, and Ferrell, maybe I should be answering this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Alex Dunlap from Roster Watch at the 12th spot took Jaden Reed in the 16th round and Luke Musgrave in the 20th round. Now, it wasn't that long ago that people were talking about, even though Musgrave was the 2nd round pick and Tucker Kraft was the 3rd round pick, wasn't that long ago, a lot of people in the industry, including dynasty players that are respected, and I still respect, said that they prefer Kraft over Musgrave. Now we hear that Musgrave is coming into training camp as the number 1 tight end. And I look at Jaden Reed as a guy that a few players have told me, everybody's talking about Watson and Dobbs, but don't forget about Reed, who's probably going to start right away. And I think he probably is the starting slot receiver right away. I look at what he did late. What do you make of that strategy? He doesn't have Jordan Love on this team, but he gets 2 pieces from a growing offense, an offense that we don't know a whole lot about. And these 2 guys could both, I don't know if they'll both hit, but one of them definitely could here.
Mm-hmm. I like everything he's done at the tight end position. It'll be really interesting to watch what he does. Now, Musgrave, you talk to any scout, you could not find a scout. Here's a player who played Oregon State, and you could not find a scout, an East Coast scout would want to talk to you about Musgrave. Everyone loves this player, and now his destination somewhat has affected the buzz about him. I think that's a steal of a pick that late. And then Hayden Hurst, falling into what they're going to ask him to do there in Carolina. That's another great tight end pick. So yes, do I think to answer your questions, Balky, we got a drafter here that knows his players and has a great depth chart, and is in he's ready for Planet Hollywood, baby.
The last player, as we have the draft just completed a minute or so ago, the last player that I want to bring up here tonight before we sign off, Ferrell, is Deneric Prince, who is a player that has ever since the Kansas City made him a chief, there have been players targeting him at the end of Fantasy Pros drafts, end of FFPC main event slow drafts, at the end of Pros versus Joe's drafts now here as well. As Deneric Prince goes off the board to Alex Dunlap. Should we be paying attention to Prince in Kansas City right now? Because there are a significant amount of Chiefs running backs there.
Yes, because the culture of the team suggests they can take a player and make that player into something. Look what they did with Pachinko. Mm-hmm. So you're saying, hey, they know what they're doing and they know what they want to have happen. So yes, there's nothing that you can argue with about that. You take players that I see, Balky, along this grouping of the 19th and 20th round. Khalil Shakir is a huge steal in this situation. He could have some big games, and he could also get some special teams work too and bust a punt or kick return there. Goodness gracious, Claypool did get drafted. It's an amazing and I like most of the players that went. I love Claypool, but I like most of the players that went after him even better. So it's pretty fascinating that in this format we could be in the 20th round and find a lot of players with significant upside that could make these teams winners at the end of the season.
More important than ever are the last few rounds of a FFPC Pros versus Joe's draft, because you are having this is a situation where you don't have it. We don't do the 28 rounds in this format. Haven't done the 28 rounds in several years in this format, and because of the depth that's available as far as the talent level goes for a lot of these teams, it's very, very interesting. And we've got this draft in the books tonight, Ferrell, but we got 5 more to cover, and I think there's going to be so much more fun to unpack as we go forward in this format. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. KFFSC.com is where to go. Main events available live in Cincinnati, live in Louisville, spots available there as well. KFFSC.com is where to go to check that out as well. And I will talk with you again an hour later. We'll talk with you again tomorrow night at 9 o'clock Eastern time.
See you then, Balky.
Ferrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. I want to thank our guests tonight on the program that joined me in Ferrell. It was Josh Latz. It was Todd Burros. Great stuff for both of those guys. Tomorrow night, we will be broadcasting the second draft of the Pros versus Joe's league. It's league number 2, the Garrison Pub tomorrow. If you haven't figured it out, all these are Peaky Blinders references as far as the league names go. Tomorrow night we have FFPC Joe's Scott Keycohen, and I butcher his name every time. I think that's what it is. Jeffrey and Alan Eidelman, the brothers team that will be taking on the Joes from the 4 spot. David Hubbard, former FFPC main event champ in 2016. He'll be in the draft. Brad Petri and Darren Larson, the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship winners, main event winners back in 2021, I believe. Roy Parenzuela and Corey Hanstein, they've been in this format before. And then Albert Leach drafting from the 12 spot. Those are the Joes, the Pros tomorrow night. Fantasy Points own John Hansen, Derek Brown from Fantasy Pros, Best Bell Fantasy and Player Profilers, Bradley Stalder will be in it. Peter Overzet from Fantasy Life. Also from Fantasy Life is Dwayne McFarland and Brian Drake from Pro Football Focus and Fantasy Points. They'll be teaming up again tomorrow. Nelson Burbett from Dynasty Depot will round out the Pros. I have to mention again, to get your FFPC main event teams registered and paid for by midnight Pacific time tomorrow, if you have that done by July 31st, you will have your draft slot or slots. If you bought multiple teams, remember $400 off each additional team you buy. You're going to have those slots by July 31st, so you can figure out plot your way of who you're going to take where based on you already knowing your draft slot because you got your payment taken care of on that. FFPC main event slow drafts are off and running. Fantasy Pros championship drafts going on. I got commissioning a couple here coming up, the midnight draft obviously as well, so sign up for that at myffpc.com. That's another contest in addition to the main event where you can take advantage of it and go for a $1 million grand prize at myffpc.com. Pair of best ball tournaments going on as well. Dynasty startups are going off strong. We've never had a Dynasty League fold in more than a decade, 1,400 plus teams, so make sure you're registering for that at myffpc.com. That will complete our show tonight. We'll be back at 9 o'clock tomorrow for League number 2. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We really appreciate it. And we will talk with you again tomorrow night in about 23 and a half hours. So thanks so much, everybody.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
And for what it's worth, I know everybody said Billy Musio's team was the best, but feel free to hop on the FFPC Twitter. Let us know which teams you like best from this draft as well. We'll talk to you again tomorrow night. Thanks for watching.